Hello, I am Lucy Strange. I'm a children's author, and I'm delighted to say that I will be coming to the Isle of Wight Story Festival in 2026. And I will be talking about my middle grade novel, The Island at the Edge of Night. Not the island at the edge of Wight, the island at the edge of night. And it is a gothic mystery thriller set in a sort of prison school on a remote island. Now, I've been sent a few questions about this story. Um, and so I'm going to answer them. I'm going to answer them for you now. Question one is, what inspired you to write the story? Well, as with all my books, there are lots of different ingredients, but quite a few of my stories begin with settings. And that's true of this one, The Island at the Edge of Night. So The Island at the Edge of Night began with the Hebrides Islands, in particular, my love of the Isle of Skye, which you can actually see. You can see some of the paintings here in my writing shed. Um, and then some of the more remote Hebrides Islands as well, places like St Kilda, places that are beautiful, but bleak. That a sense of wildness, a sense that you really are sort of at the edge of the world, and in the cold, dark winter in which this story is set, that feeling that night is always sort of just over the horizon. And there are lots of other things that fed into this story too. Lots of other ideas like the magic of ancient woodland, of old trees, and I suppose one of the biggest ideas at the heart of it is this idea of kind of rebellion, the idea of, and it crops up in quite a few of my stories, the idea of children who are powerless, finding their voice and finding the courage to stand up to the adults in the story who are sometimes behaving in a way that's cruel or ignorant. So that idea of kind of positive rebellion. Question two is, if your main character had a favourite snack, what would it be and why? So my main character in the story is called Faye Fitzgerald, and she's been sent away to this sort of prison school on this remote island. She's been told, and all the other children in the school have been told they've been sent there because they've done. And I have to say, Faye is not particularly food motivated. I would say, but there's a part of the story where she's kind of on the run with a boy who's supposed to be dead, and they're hiding in this sort of labyrinth of secret tunnels in the old abbey on Orc Island. And they are really, really hungry at this particular point in the story, and they smell bacon cooking in the kitchen. And they decide they're going to sneak into the kitchen to snaffle these bacon sandwiches. But is it just luck that the kitchen appears to be deserted and full of delicious bacon sandwiches, or is it indeed a trap? Who can say? Question three. Did you ever imagine yourself as a character in your own book? And if so, who would you be? Well, there's a bit of me in all my characters. There is a bit, and I think probably that's what writers need to do in order to make the characters feel authentic and convincing and believable and real. And I do love Faye Fitzgerald very much. She's very close to my heart. But I think my favourite character in this story is this brilliant girl called Boudica Braithwaite, who is just one of these fantastic people. We all know them. One of these people who have absolutely no filter. She has no filter. She is completely fearless, and she says whatever pops into her head, whatever she wants to say. In fact, she's so engaging as a character. She's so entertaining that we ended up having to sort of lock her up for quite a substantial part of the story. Otherwise, she just took over the scenes. So anyway, so Boudica is possibly my favourite in this particular book. Question four, if your book had a theme song, what would it be? Or would it be more of a sound effect? Now, some of my books do have theme songs, actually. Some of them do. So, for example, this one, Sisters of the Lost Marsh, I found this really fantastic folk music. It's like Nordic pagan folk music that was kind of the sort of the thrumming, beating heart underneath that particular story. But I don't think Island does. I don't think this one does so much. So I think it's more of a sound effect for this one. So it's the sound of the sea kind of whipped up by an oncoming storm, and the cries of the seabirds, and maybe like the whisper of something magic, something ancient at the heart of the island, something that Faye has to find. Question 5 is, what do you like better, writing the beginning, the middle, or the ending of a story? Did you? It's different for every book. Every book is different. Quite often, though, I love the beginning. The beginning is always a joy because you're always so in love with the story at that point, and you haven't had a chance to get sick of it. And it's that magic bit where it's something that's existed only in your head to that point, has a chance to come to life, and that is always brilliant and always a wonderful and very very exciting time. I do love writing the endings as well, particularly because a lot of my all my stories really have got mysteries woven into them, and there are all these different plot threads that come together at the end in a really kind of satisfying way, and it's often very very emotional. The ending of my stories too. Invariably, I'm sitting there writing the final paragraphs with tears running down my face because the heart of the story, the emotion of the story has come to its conclusion too. Question 6 is, what do you do when you get stuck writing? Um, Sometimes I just sit there and stare at the screen, and that's not helpful. Don't do that. Don't just sit there. That's the worst thing you can do, actually. What you need to do is get up and do something else, usually. Sometimes I go out for a plot walk. So I love walking and giving myself a problem to think about as I'm walking, as I'm out in nature. I often find that's a good way to kind of sift through things and to allow ideas to settle. Um, Very often, when you're stuck, it's actually because you don't know what needs to happen next, or you haven't imagined it, you haven't visualized it yet. Um, and there are lots of different ways you can work this out. So sometimes you can take a plot perspective, but the best way is character. So really taking some time to think about what your character wants, what your character needs in that moment. Using your acting skills, really inhabiting the character, stepping inside the character, thinking and feeling as the character. And that using that is very, very often your way through those sticky bits where you can't where you don't know where you're going with the story. Finding your character's way through it is very often how you get onto the next step. So the last question is question number 7. Can you describe your book using just 3 emojis? Of course I can't. Of course I can't, but I will try. So I would want to convey, um, briefly, is the gothic tension in the story, the wildness of the setting, and that kind of whisper of the ancient magic that's in there in the story. So I think I'd go for like shocked face, like that one, and then the wave, like the ocean wave, to represent like the wildness of the place and how isolated the island is in the middle of this huge dark ocean. And then those stars, the magic stars, to show that little bit of the magic of ancient trees and that kind of thing that's there at the story. Um, I'm not sure that really does it though, does it? It doesn't really do it. I think there's nothing for it. I think you might just have to actually read the book. There we go.